My name is Rahi Holloway, and I hit the floor right in front of my entire family on Christmas Eve. Food spilling across the table and onto me, my side throbbing because my stepbrother Zane shoved me hard away from the spot under the old wall clock and snarled, "That seat belongs to my dad. Get out." For a moment, no one moved. The Christmas lights twinkled in the background, forks froze midair. I looked up at Zane's smug half grin and waited for my mom to say something, anything to defend me. She didn't. She just turned away, pretending the mess on the floor was the real issue, not the person lying in it. That was the instant something inside me shut off. Not explosive anger, but something quieter, colder, irreversible. Lansing, Michigan is my home. Cold winters, quiet neighborhoods, simple life at the local accounting firm. I'm 34 now, and I've always lived by straightforward rules. Show up, keep your promises, handle your own business. At this age, your reputation is everything. And that's why that spot under the clock mattered so much. It was the place we always took family photos every holiday, right under my late father's old wall clock, the only thing he left me before he passed when I was 12. I'd kept it polished, made sure it hung straight in the dining room of my mom's house. For years, it felt like holding on to a piece of him. That night, something broke for good. I pushed myself up slowly, ignoring the pain shooting through my side, and walked out into the freezing Michigan night without a word. As I sat in my car, engine running, watching the house lights from the driveway, I knew a decision had already been made, one that would change everything forever. If this story hits close to home, if you've ever felt like an outsider at your own family table, or had your kindness taken for weakness, drop a comment below and tell me your thoughts. Share this with someone who needs the reminder that you're not alone. And if you want more real stories like this, stick around with us. I drove away from that house in the heavy Lansing snow, tires crunching over the frozen streets as I headed back to my small apartment on the east side of town. The pain in my side throbbed with every bump in the road, but I kept the heater blasting and the radio off. No Christmas music to mock me tonight. Lansing, Michigan has always been home. Cold winters that bury everything under layers of white. Quiet suburbs where neighbors wave from their driveways while shoveling snow. Friday nights at local spots, like the corner pub with craft beer on tap, and conversations about high school football games that still matter years later. I'm 34 now, working as an accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown. Steady paycheck deposited every 2 weeks, full benefits, the kind of job that lets you pay bills ahead of schedule and build a modest emergency fund. I've lived carefully ever since Dad passed when I was 12. Thomas Holloway fought a long illness that drained everything, leaving behind medical debts Mom struggled with, and that old wall clock he'd picked up at a flea market one summer. The glass face has a faint crack from when we moved after the funeral. The hands move a bit slow if you don't wind it regularly, but the tick-tock is steady, reliable. The only constant sound from my early childhood I can still recall clearly. Mom kept the clock after he was gone. Elaine hung it right in the center of the dining room wall when she remarried Michael Larson a few years later. "It's the one thing your father left specifically for you," she told me back then. "We'll keep it there so you always remember him when we gather." Michael didn't object. He was a quiet man. Steady job in manufacturing at one of the plants outside town, brought his son Zane into our lives as part of the package. Blended family, everyone called it. I tried my hardest to make it feel natural. That's why, about 3 years ago, I decided to use a big chunk of my savings, the money I'd scraped together slowly by living frugally, driving the same reliable sedan for a decade, skipping trips or big purchases, to completely redo the dining room at their house. The old floor was worn linoleum, peeling at the corners and stained from years of spills. The walls were a dull yellow that made the whole space feel closed in, even with the windows open. I researched contractors online, got multiple quotes, chose a local crew with good reviews. We ripped out the old flooring and laid down solid oak hardwood that felt warm and substantial underfoot, painted the walls a soft cream tone that caught the light better, replaced the outdated ceiling fixture with pendant lights that cast a gentle glow over the table during dinners. I even added new baseboards and a fresh coat on the trim to tie it all together. Nothing flashy, just quality work that made the room inviting. Mom cried happy tears the day it was finished. She walked around, touching the new surfaces, hand over her mouth. "Now we can actually have people over without feeling ashamed of the place," she said, pulling me into a hug. "You've made this feel like a real home." I believed her, believed we were finally creating something solid, a space where holidays and birthdays could happen without awkwardness. I handled all the paperwork myself. Mom suggested it early on. "You're the one who deals with numbers every day, Carla. Better if you sign the contracts and handle the payments." I didn't think twice. I put down the deposits from my checking account, scheduled the inspections, made sure the crew got paid on time. Reimbursements came slowly, checks from Mom and Michael over several months, but I didn't mind. It felt like investing in us, in belonging. Zane never offered to chip in. Michael's son from his previous marriage, a few years older than me, always drifting between short-term jobs, warehouse shifts, delivery routes, construction gigs that ended abruptly. He'd show up back at the house when things fell apart, duffel bag in hand, filling the space with his loud voice and restless pacing. Mom would smooth it over, defending him every time. "He's going through a rough patch," she'd say, if I mentioned the mess he left or the late rent he owed somewhere else. I went along, helping out in small ways, a couple hundred for gas when he claimed an interview across state, covering a utility bill once when Mom asked quietly over the phone. Thought it built bridges, showed I was all in on this family thing. The clock hung through every stage of the remodel, wrapped carefully while the walls were painted, rehung proudly in its central spot. Once the dust settled, I took over winding it, polishing the wood frame on weekends when I visited. It became my quiet ritual, a link to Dad in a room I'd helped transform. Sitting in my apartment that night, staring at the blank wall where I could hang something of my own someday, those choices felt less like generosity and more like quiet dues paid for a seat that was never truly mine. The dining room shone now, ready for gatherings, but the people filling it still treated me like the helpful outsider, the one who fixed problems and footed bills, but didn't quite belong under that ticking reminder of what I'd lost long ago. I sat in my apartment that night, the dim lamp casting long shadows across the room as the events replayed in sharp fragments. The silence felt heavier than usual, broken only by the occasional creak of the building and distant snowplows clearing the streets outside. Zane Larson had always carried an edge that set him apart in our blended setup. Michael's son from his earlier marriage, a few years my senior, around 37. He had the build of someone who relied on physical presence, broad frame, quick movements, a voice that carried whether he intended it or not. Jobs came and went for him, like seasons, a few months stocking shelves at a big box store near the mall, a stretch loading trucks at a distribution center on the outskirts, even a brief run as a rideshare driver before complaints piled up. When opportunities dried up, he'd return to the house with bags and excuses, settling in until the next chance appeared. Mom accommodated every time. Elaine rearranged the spare room without complaint, stocked snacks he liked, deflected questions from neighbors or relatives. "He's figuring things out," she'd say, toned final. It preserved harmony with Michael, who stayed quiet on the subject but clearly appreciated the lack of conflict. I watched the pattern form over years, Zane's returns becoming longer, his contributions shorter. He viewed me as peripheral from the beginning, never quite stepsister, just Carla. When acknowledgement was unavoidable, he'd use the garage for projects without cleaning up, borrow kitchen appliances that migrated to his room, offer opinions on my choices, career too safe, apartment too small, life too predictable. I absorbed it, convincing myself patience bridged gaps in blended families. Mom reinforced the dynamic subtly. When tensions rose, she'd pull me aside. "Let it go. He's had it rougher." Or when Zane pushed boundaries, "Pick your battles. Michael's happy when things are smooth." I complied, believing compromise earned place. Christmas Eve built like any other, but undercurrents pulled stronger. Relatives arrived steadily, uncles with bottles of wine, aunts carrying dessert trays, cousins chasing kids through the halls. The house filled with overlapping voices, smells of baked ham and spiced cider drifting from the kitchen. Someone cued holiday classics on the speaker, soft instrumentals at first, then familiar vocals that prompted sing-alongs. Michael moved through it, all efficiently, checking the oven timer, topping off glasses. Mom orchestrated from the center, directing seating, passing appetizers. Zane showed up fashionably late, boots thudding snow on the entry mat, greeting louder than necessary to draw eyes his way. Dinner unfolded with practiced rhythm. Plates circulated, stories swapped, updates on new jobs, grandkids' milestones, light complaints about winter heating bills. Laughter rose and fell, genuine in moments, strained in others. I joined conversations where I could, refilling water glasses, helping clear courses. After plates emptied, the annual photo ritual began. Everyone migrated to the dining room, arranging in loose rows under the clock, the spot that framed shots perfectly year after year, capturing growth and changes against the warm backdrop I'd helped create. Kids up front on boosters, adults layered behind, smiles readied for the timer. I took my usual position near the middle, close enough for inclusion without dominating. Zane shifted suddenly, body-checking me with deliberate force. "This is for my dad's actual family," he announced clearly, stepping into the center as I stumbled sideways. My hip caught the table corner hard, dishes rattled, gravy bout tipped, sides scattered across the cloth and down my clothes. I hit the floor solidly, breath knocked out in a rush. The impact echoed in the sudden hush. A child's gasp cut through, then nothing. I lay there, stunned, pain spreading sharp from hip to ribs, waiting for hands to reach down or voices to intervene. Mom averted her gaze, fussing with spilled napkins. Michael glanced briefly, then returned to his phone. Zane held the pose, satisfied smirk in place. No assistance came. The clock ticked on above, steady and indifferent, marking seconds while illusions shattered completely. All the tolerance, the financial help, the remodel, it hadn't secured belonging. It had merely postponed this raw exposure of where I truly stood. I pushed myself up from the floor, brushing off the spilled food as best I could, while the room stayed frozen around me. No one moved to help. No voice cut through the awkward quiet. I grabbed my coat from the hook by the door, slipped on my boots, and walked out into the snowy night without a single word. The cold hit hard the second I stepped outside, wind whipping flakes across the porch light's glow. My side ached with every breath, but I made it to the car, sliding behind the wheel and starting the engine to let the heater warm up. The driveway was already dusted white again, tires leaving fresh tracks as I backed out slowly, careful on the slick surface. Lansing streets were mostly empty this late on Christmas Eve, holiday lights twinkling from window panes.
Houses along the way, families inside wrapped in warmth I no longer felt part of. The drive to my apartment took about 20 minutes, with the cautious speed past the closed shops downtown, over the bridge where the Grand River reflected street lamps and broken shards, through neighborhoods where snow muffled everything. Hands gripped the wheel tighter than needed, knuckles white against the dashboard glow. The pain radiated in waves, a constant reminder, but I focused on the road, wipers sweeping rhythmically. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. Mom's name first, then Zane's, then Mom again. I let each call ring out, screen lighting the interior briefly before going dark. By the time I parked in my spot behind the building, snow had started accumulating on the windshield again. I sat there a minute, engine idling, watching flakes melt on the glass. Finally, shut it off, grabbed my things, and headed up the exterior stairs, key ready for the lock. Inside, the apartment felt smaller than usual. I dropped keys on the entry table, hung the coat, left boots by the door to drip on the mat. Didn't turn on main lights, just a small lamp in the living room, casting long shadows across the couch and bookshelves. Sank down heavy, still in sweater and jeans, staring at the blank TV screen reflecting the room back at me. The phone buzzed again on the table, a text this time. "Zane, you're just a guest here. Stop making a fool of yourself." A guest? After everything? The words stung sharper than the cold outside. I set the phone face down, leaned back, and let the quiet settle. The building hummed faintly, neighbors' muffled TV somewhere above, heat pipes clinking as they expanded. Memories came unbidden, specific ones that painted the picture clearer than any broad regret.
Like 18 months ago when Zane lost another job and needed reliable transportation for the next one lined up. He'd cornered me in the kitchen during a Sunday visit. Casual as ever. Dealership has this used SUV, decent miles, good for deliveries, just need help with the down payment to get better terms. Mom nodded along from the sink. I transferred $1,500 that week, thinking it invested in stability. He bought the vehicle, but the job fell through and the money never came back. Excuses about unexpected registration fees, then silence. Or the spring before that, when his apartment lease ended suddenly over late payments. Mom called one evening, voice hushed. He's got nowhere lined up yet. Can you spot him first and last month's rent for a new place? Your credit's strong if we put it under your name temporarily. The landlord won't ask questions. I co-signed the application online that night, paid the deposit from savings. He moved in, stayed 6 months before skipping out on the last 2, leaving me to cover or face collections. Smaller instances stacked up too. Covering concert tickets when he forgot cash for a group outing Michael planned, paying for his portion of a tool set he claimed was for house projects, but used for side gigs that never panned out. Even fronting costs for a certification course he swore would change things, only to drop it halfway. Each time, the request came wrapped in urgency and family obligation. Mom's pleas about keeping peace with Michael, Zane's promises, it was just this once. I'd rationalized it as my role, the stable one, filling gaps, proving commitment in a setup that never fully welcomed me. In the dim light, those moments lined up like evidence. Not isolated favors, but a system where I absorbed costs to maintain equilibrium. The house remodel I'd funded, the paperwork I'd handled, the patience I'd extended, it all fed the same dynamic, useful when needed, disposable when inconvenient. The phone stayed silent now, no more buzzes. I got up, eventually, made tea in the kitchen, steam rising against the window overlooking the snow-filled lot. The ache in my side had dulled to a steady throb, matching the clearer ache inside. No tears came, just a deep, exhausting recognition that efforts to belong had only highlighted how conditional it all was. I rinsed the mug, turned off the lamp, and headed to bed early, pulling covers high against the chill seeping through the walls. Sleep came slow, mind turning over the shift that had started hours earlier on that dining room floor. Morning sunlight cut through the half-open blinds as I stirred on the couch, a dull headache pulsing from the awkward sleep and everything that had crashed down the night before. The apartment was chilly, the radiator hadn't fully kicked in yet. I reached for my phone on the coffee table, intending to check work messages and call in if needed. The screen lit up with the usual notifications, but one stood out immediately. A push alert from the credit monitoring service I'd subscribed to a couple years back, after a coworker got hit with identity theft. The banner read, "Alert, new account opened in your name." My thumb hovered a second before tapping it open. The app loaded the details slowly, and there it was. A new personal loan for $22,000, approved and dispersed, with me listed as cosigner. The lender was the community credit union I'd banked with forever, the same one downtown where I'd opened my first checking account in college. The origination date was recent enough to make my skin crawl. I sat up straighter, heart rate picking up as I scrolled through the summary. Attached images showed scanned documents, application form, ID copies, income verification pulled from old tax records somehow. The signature line bore my name in ink that looked close, familiar slant on the letters, but the curves were off, the pressure uneven in places I never varied. Only someone who'd watched me sign checks or forms over years would attempt it thinking the small differences wouldn't matter. Coffee forgotten, I opened my laptop on the kitchen counter and logged into the full credit report portal for a deeper look. The hard inquiry from the credit union had already hit, dropping my score a noticeable chunk. With the loan balance now reporting as active debt, the utilization ratio spiked, dragging the number down further. I'd worked hard to keep that score high, paying cards in full, never missing due dates, building it brick by brick for security, for options. Seeing it eroded overnight felt like watching savings evaporate. The vehicle purpose was listed clearly, auto purchase. A truck, probably. Zane had been complaining about his old one breaking down constantly. Pieces clicked too neatly. I picked up the phone and dialed the credit union's direct line, the one for member concerns I'd saved once for a disputed charge. The hold music played softly while the system verified my account. Finally, Sarah came on, mid-40s, voice calm and experienced, the type who handled upset callers daily without rushing. After security questions, I asked her to pull the loan file. She typed for a minute, then confirmed the basics. Primary borrowers, Elaine Larson and Zane Larson. Funds released for a new pickup truck registered in Zane's name. Your profile was used for co-signing approval, she said carefully. Supporting docs include joint account history from years ago and the signature page. I asked about the signature specifically. She described it over the line, matching most traits, but with inconsistencies in the flourish on the Y and spacing between letters. Close enough for automated systems, she noted, but a manual review would flag it. She walked me through the immediate effects. The inquiry alone cost points. The open balance raised debt to income perceptions